Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm from New Jersey. I wanted to make my first video today, basically to thank everybody who has encouraged me to make my own videos. Mike from Comic Crypt, way out there in Castle Hills, had his year-end awards video, and in it he really put into words why we are all here, keeping each other company, spending our time doing this thing in the hobby with each other and so forth. And I think that that can't be said enough. Of course, I've been watching a lot of the videos for a long time and never had the chance to make my own video, so we'll see how it goes this time. I did do a New York Comic-Con walkthrough, and it was 2 months ago, and I think my feet are still hurting. But anyway, ETA Nick, want to thank you for encouraging me too. You do videos with such earnest, not just for your enjoyment, but because you also kind of feel it's your duty. Great Legend, your show is awesome. I think you have a good time. Everyone has a good time watching. When I first started watching Great Legends videos, you sit and look at a green screen that says, "We'll start momentarily," and it's playing music. And I thought, what does this say about him, that we're all sitting here waiting for his video to start? Then I kind of thought, what does it say about me that I'm sitting here waiting for a video to start? But I guess there's nothing like a little bit of anticipation. Don, the Icon Comic Junkie, your videos, I've been watching them for a long time. I've seen you evolve. I remember way back when you were just another regular junkie. Now you're an icon. The Comicaholics, you guys are terrific. One thing I can say is when I was dating my wife in the early 90s, she actually helped me do my master list, the first one I ever did for my comic collection. I've been collecting since the 70s. And we used to go to comic shows together. She would take part of the list and go to one side of the room. I'd go to the other side of the room. And the moral of the story is we're in our 26th year of marriage. So the family that collects together stays together. And even though our 21-year-old son is more of a baseball card collector, he does it with great interest and vigor. He collects vintage, so it's really something that can keep a family going, and a hobby is something everyone can share. I think that this unique corner of comic book fandom, the YouTube community, is it's so much fun. I'm very excited to be a part of it, just to watch the videos on a daily basis. I think what I'd like to talk about a little bit at times is the history that I have seen in fandom itself. Not only do we have nostalgia about the comics, but there's also nostalgia about this community and how everyone's gotten together. So back there used to be letter writers to the comic books. You look in there, I saw Nick had Fantastic Four #5 up. You could see one of Roy Thomas's letters to the editor, and he would write to Julius Schwartz, and the next thing you know, he made contact with Jerry Bales in Michigan, and they became friends. And the next thing you know, fanzines started coming along, APAs, newsletters, and as the years progressed, comic book databases, and then there was a strong internet community with mailing lists, Yahoo groups, and so on. So there's really been a lot of things for everyone to participate in, but YouTube is so unique in that you can be creative and visual at the same time. It's not the same as having to read, wait for an issue to come out of the next fan magazine, Alter Ego will be here, or an email mailing list where you send your question and it comes back 10 hours later or the next day. So what got me started in the hobby was the early superhero TV shows like Batman in the 60s, which I watched in the 70s in syndication, and of course George Reeves' Superman. And I started to buy some of the comics when I was a little kid. My mother would get them for me at the stationery store. And I know some of the people who collected editions wonder, how can you read the showcase editions and the books that have no color to your stories? And what I got early on in my collecting years was Superman from the 30s to the 70s. I think they did one of these for Batman and for Shazam. And as you can tell, it's all black and white. And I think I read this thing cover to cover. It came out in the late 70s many, many times, and it inspired me to chase down the comics and to become more active in that part of collection, Superman. And for a Christmas somewhat around the same time, I was given one of the last of the Fireside books that Stan Lee edited, and there you do have color work. And I thought these were just amazing because they were themed. This is superhero battles. There were others that he did, and he gave you a cross-section of many different comics. So it wasn't only all Spider-Man stories or Hulk stories or something like that. And I enjoyed that very much. Years later, I started going to some of the shows. I went to my first comic book convention, a creation convention, in the late 70s in New York City. But once we got into the 80s and so forth, I realized that we were lucky to have some of the creators still with us that had produced all of these comics that we've read and enjoyed for so many years. So one of my earliest comics that survives, this is meaning I bought it myself, is this Superman number 254. And it somehow, I think I got it when I was 6 or 7 or 8. It survived moves and school years and being read a million times. And so some years later, I got Curt Swan and Murphy Anderson to sign it for me. And I didn't want them to sign a new comic or a better version. I wanted them to sign my copy. So this is not a CGC yellow label, but this one stays with me. When I was I'd say the first important book I got, which really made me feel like now I could collect and hold my head high, was this Spider-Man 6. My parents got it for me one year for my birthday, and it's not the greatest condition. It's maybe a VG, but I think I had this out on my desk and looked at it every day for a year and just thought it was inspiring to have an early Spider-Man comic in my collection. When we got into the 80s, I started to hear of this book called The Amazing World of DC Comics. And this kind of reminded me of bringing Stan Lee's letter section to life, or, you know, the profiles that Paul Levitz or someone like that would write in the back of DC books. And you could actually see what they had planned. There were some creator interviews, and I bought these, you know, years after they were published, but I really like them. The Superman issue, and he's on the back too, as well as the Julius Schwartz themed issue. And he was always very funny and kind of one of those guys like Stan Lee who you see as an icon in the business. And they kind of make you feel like you're jumping into the comics that you're reading when you talk to them, because they were there when they really got big, or when the form came as we came to know it. DC Comics, Superman comics, as they were in the 60s and 70s when I started reading them, were the brainchild of Julius Schwartz and Kurt Swan and people like that. So it was a pleasure to, years later, be able to meet them and see what they were like and ask them a million questions. I know that Julius Schwartz wrote a book. I have it somewhere, and I recommend it. It's an autobiography. It's about his life in comics. It's a lot of fun because not only was he important in comics, but he was a big science fiction fan himself. He and folks like Ray Bradbury were fans of Isaac Asimov. They wrote newsletters and fanzines of their own. So when the comic fan movement was born, Julius Schwartz was very elemental in helping that grow and cultivated it, and was receptive to talking to fans and dealing with fans. So he has a lot of things that we can be thankful for, in addition to the work that he's done in comics specifically. I just wanted to leave by saying I know that Nick has his auction on December the 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, so I'm looking forward to that. Everybody else whose videos are coming soon, I can't wait to see what you're doing, what you guys have gotten. I wanted to again thank everyone for the inspiration, for hopefully watching and surviving this long and not dozing off. And keep it up, and thank everybody for being so welcoming. Now this is the part where I reach over and turn off the camera, and sometimes you think that like you're going to get hit with a right hook, but that's not the case.